We're back with another episode of the One Pour Problems podcast. I am super excited to say that I am joined by Mike Kopsick, the managing partner of KKC Law. Super excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Sal. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking a bunch about building leaders and, how do you create a lasting culture. So we'll dive into that in a bit, but first I want to start off with just understanding a little bit about, what's the drink that you brought today?
Well, thanks for giving me an opportunity to tell you a little story that I think relates to our topic for today. My family and I love food and wine and travel. And last fall, we had a chance to take the trip of a lifetime to Tuscany.
Cool.
And before the trip, I had researched a particular wine shop that I had heard about that we wanted to try for a tasting. And we found it in this little village in Siena, which is a walled city in the south part of Tuscany. And we walked into the wine shop and met the owner. And it's this tiny little brick place that looks lost in time and goes back to God knows when. And I didn't see any space that was suitable to get everybody seated to have a tasting. And I said, well, where are we going? And he said, well, we're going down into the cellar. And he then tells me a story about how the cellar was found and created. So this gentleman, whose family goes back in the wine business in Tuscany for centuries, bought this shop and wanted to expand the back space to create a little more storage. And as he brought in his contractors, they were jackhammering in the floor, and all of a sudden the jackhammer went right down through the floor. So when they excavated, what they found was an ancient Etruscan village, going back even before the Romans.
Wow.
So the Italian Archaeological Society got involved, and all of the local agencies got involved, and they permitted him to expand the space and refurbish it as a tasting room. So think about what a great opportunity that is for somebody in the wine business to have that type of story to pitch to his customers. And you literally go down into a room that existed before the birth of Christ to have your tasting. And they served the most wonderful Brunellos, which is the wine king of the region. And I brought one of those bottles that we purchased from that store for you and I to try today. So
awesome.
Let's tee it up.
I really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Excellent. Always nice and smooth.
Good.
So the connection of that story to why I'm here today and what I think we're going to talk about is that, there are lots of components to success in business. Obviously, some talent, commitment, hard work, dedication, but there's often a little luck. And it's really, what do you do with that luck, right? So here's a guy who stumbles upon an ancient Etruscan city underneath his wine shop, and he parlays it into really worldwide notoriety as a wine cellar. And my own little luck story that I can relate to is that I started my career working for a large firm in New York City, and I really didn't like it from the get-go. I didn't like the vibe, wasn't super wild about the city.
Why is that?
The workplace was sort of your traditional big firm sweatshop. I saw the life that the partners were leading there, going home at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, flying all over the world constantly, never really having any connection to the office or to their family. They were just workhorses. And while they made a lot of money, they didn't seem to be particularly happy people.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't have anything that wouldn't have been known back then as work-life balance, because I'm not sure that term existed. But they didn't have any of that. It was work, work, work all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I came home for Easter Sunday, and I was at Mass with my family, and I ran into my old girlfriend's mother, of all people, right? And I told her about how miserable I was down there, and she said, oh, by the way, I'm the bookkeeper at Kahan Kerensky Capossela, KKC. And she goes, I think we have an opening. And the rest is history. So if it wasn't for me making a beeline home for Easter Sunday and running into my old girlfriend's mom, I'm not sure where my career arc would have gone, but it's been a good run for the last 36 years at Kahan Kerensky, now KKC. And I really appreciated the opportunity to take advantage of that. So got a little bit of luck, ran with it.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And happy to hear that you ended on good terms with your old girlfriend so that the mom would still bring you into the firm. That's great.
Always important to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about your background and where you started, but I definitely want to hear, like, what was you went to school, like, did you know you were going to be going, into this field, and then you jump into New York, into that firm, wasn't your style.
Yeah.
And then you led here, and now, like, you've worked your way to managing partner now, which is quite the accomplishment. And so,
thank you.
I want to hear more about, like, that path.
I didn't go to college with the mindset that I was going to be a lawyer. I actually wanted to be a doctor. And then I took organic chemistry and realized that wasn't going to get there, I don't think. It was, way, way above my pay grade, and struggled through it, and spent a lot of times in labs while my friends were partying out on the quad somewhere, having a good time.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that maybe med school is not where it's at. So I ended up graduating with a liberal arts degree and figured, well, okay, what am I going to do with that? And that's when the idea of taking the LSATs and going to law school was hatched. And I've really taken to it, obviously. And like I said, started my career in New York City after graduating from Western New England. The environment wasn't really what I was hoping for, and I didn't really ever have the intention of staying in New York forever.
Yep.
I thought it was just a good opportunity to get some experience.
Sure.
But I think what I learned is that in firms like that, you're so pigeonholed into something so specific that it really doesn't give you a full spectrum of what the law has to offer and what other things might be of interest. You're kind of grinding away on one component of one problem for an extended period of time, and while you might develop some focus or expertise, it doesn't really translate to a career in the law unless you're able to parlay that one very pigeonholed task into an entire career. Some people can do it. That wasn't for me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have more client contact. I wanted to have a broader range of things to get my teeth into. And like I said, when this job presented at a community-based law firm that had, at that time, 5 or 6 different practice areas and gave me an opportunity to work in a more collegial environment, I jumped at it, and obviously happy that I did.
Yeah, no, and again, it's really important. I feel like every leader that I've talked to on the show has had not a similar story, but similar in the fact of, like, they had to find out what they didn't like before they were like, I know that this is what I want. And I think a lot of younger people, especially coming out of school and stuff like that, are, they're really focused because they're like, I need to know what I want to do, and I need to go right into it because I can't, like, be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they have to try things to figure out what you don't like first.
I tell my own kids, and I tell the younger lawyers who come to work at the firm, that bad experiences are often more valuable learning experiences than good ones. Yeah. We learn from our mistakes, and that's sort of a tired old adage that people drag out all the time to make you feel better when something goes wrong. But I think there's a whole lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
I think you develop a different skill set of how to pivot, how to strengthen the skills that may have been weak, that resulted in the bad experience. And it's really, in my estimation, more important than just being patted on the back all the time for successes. There's no growth that really comes from that, or little growth that comes from that, in my opinion.
Yeah, without a doubt. So tell me a little bit about KKC as it is today, right? Like, what's the makeup of the firm? What do you guys specialize in? Give the viewers a little bit about that.
We presently have 16 lawyers and 38 total employees in one office in Vernon. We have had smaller satellite offices in the past, but now we're just kind of down to the mothership. We've been in the same location for virtually all of our 65 years of practice.
That's cool.
The firm was, 61 years of practice. The firm was founded in 1964 as a community-based practice with 2 lawyers, and it's grown to be the largest firm east of the river, from the river itself all the way down to New London. Right now, the core practice areas are litigation, real estate, planning and zoning work, estate planning, and business. And within those practice areas, there are smaller sort of subspecialties that particular lawyers focus on. Young people who come to work at the office often get a chance to experience or have exposure to different practice areas, but I think we've always encouraged people to gravitate towards what they like. I think you're going to be better doing the things that you enjoy than the things that you don't. So as soon as somebody expresses a real interest in being a family lawyer or being a zoning lawyer, I think we encourage and cultivate that, and I have a sort of proven track record of success, since many of the people that are there today have partners started their careers or came to the firm very early in their careers, like I did, and have ascended to the partner level.
That's very cool. So obviously that speaks a little bit to the culture then, right? And I know we're talking about that a little bit today, but speak to the culture if you can, retain, but also like retain and grow the people that join the firm. I think that's what a lot of people right now are struggling with in their organizations. And some of it is, the competitive landscape and financial side. The other part is just the scarcity. I know we were talking before about the Connecticut bar and, the age of the association.
It's a very aged and aging demographic, and there aren't enough law school applicants and recent law school graduates in the pipeline to fill that void anytime soon. So it is a very hot topic of discussion amongst bar leadership about how do we stimulate more growth, and where do a lot of these senior lawyers ultimately transition their practices if they're not in a firm like mine that has an infrastructure that allows a lawyer to step aside, yet their clients are still serviced by the same entity, the same culture, and the same location that the clients have grown comfortable with. So we consider ourselves lucky and successful for having maintained that constancy from generation to generation, but there are plenty of other lawyers in our community that have nowhere to turn at the end of the day and are faced with a dilemma of, do I just shut the lights off and walk away, or can I try to package up my practice and my skills and join another firm for a short period of time to transition my clients and sort of wind down. Again, we've been lucky in attracting some very talented people who were in that situation and integrated them into our practice very successfully. And a couple who came said, I only want to work for a couple of years and then I'll kind of pack it in. And I think they liked the freedom that our firm provided to them, which allowed them to be lawyers and not necessarily just small business owners dealing with admin stuff and paying bills and getting their invoices out, to focusing on what they loved, which is the work and the client relationships. So some who pronounced that they'd be gone in 2 years stayed for a decade. And it's really been great to have the benefit of that experience, as well as a client base that we've been able to retain. So we're very proud of that.
That's.
And by the way, one of those lawyers just passed away on Tuesday night. I'm disappointed to announce Joel Janenda, who was a friend, a colleague, and a really good guy and a good attorney. So I just had to mention Joel's name.
Well, sorry to hear that, and we'll
thank you. Cheers to Joel.
We'll drink to Joel.
I hope you like it, by the way.
This is great. I love this.
It gets better as it sits there for a while. It opens up really nicely, and it's just a super smooth wine with lots of great Italian dishes and beef dishes. And like I said, I can't stop it now because I latched onto this guy and joined his wine club. So now I'm getting a case of wine on a regular basis from him.
That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
And there, you're getting this.
That particular bottle I can order, but he usually just sends me a mixed case, and you can sort of curate it the way that you want. If you want more of these or you want more of those, he's very accommodating.
That's cool.
And you just obviously pay the wine cost and the shipping fee. And it arrives at your door. So it's nice to come home once in a while and have a little prize there waiting for you.
That's awesome. I love that. That's cool. Well, it's good to know that this is not completely unattainable.
No,
No, you got to do a little bit of effort to get to it, but
Sure.
I like that because it is very good.
Excellent.
So we talked a little bit about, the consistency of the people coming into the firm and then like being able to maintain it over time. What do you think like the key to that is? What's been able to allow you guys to continue to keep everything consistent and have your clients feel that?
I think good communication and people skills of those who compose your management team are key. I think what most employees prefer is sort of an open and honest dialogue with those that they work for so that they feel like their needs are being attended to and listened to. I think if you want to lose an employee fast, shut them off and don't tell them what's going on, or don't bring them into the fold at an appropriate time. And those that feel alienated, by definition, don't feel any connectivity. And if something better comes along, off they go.
Yeah.
So I think our team, our management team, which is composed of four partners, myself, Steve Sutton, Chris Bowen, Matt Willis, and our new office manager, Lisa Carpenter, have spent a lot of time talking about our culture and figuring out how to continually attend to the needs of the lawyers and the staff and what we can do to make the environment not only more productive, but more enjoyable for everybody. Because just like I said before, not only is it true that you learn from your mistakes, but I think you also are more willing to work hard and be productive in a place that you enjoy, that you feel part of, as opposed to one where you're just, turning a wheel every day in a place that you could care less about.
Yeah, collecting a paycheck.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about like that culture a little bit more, because I know we were talking a little bit before, and I referenced like a law TV show, and you were like, it's not actually like that.
No,
and,
it's not.
You see some of that stuff, and there is like the stereotype, of law firms where it is like you're burning the midnight oil, and everyone is like ruthless, and there's the deadlines are so like critical, and I'm talking to you a little bit, and it's very different from the culture side of what you're trying to do.
I think I told you that I don't generally watch those shows because I just find that having spent all day dealing with some similar stuff, that coming home and spending 2 hours watching Suits or one of the other shows is just not my preference. But I think that those shows do a service to the community in that they educate the clientele about what goes on in a lawsuit or what goes on in a law firm. On the flip side, though, it creates or sets some very unrealistic expectations about how lawyers can be miracle workers and take the most bizarre set of circumstances and parlay it into huge success. What those shows generally skip is the grind and the grunt work and the detail work and the effort that really goes into taking a case from its infancy to a successful conclusion. And that might be a zoning application or a personal injury suit or a divorce case or a criminal matter, any number of things that we handle. But I think too often the TV version of the law firm kind of glorifies the sexy stuff and ignores the real grinded out detail work that is closer to reality.
Got it. So what does the culture actually look like then? Like, what is, I open up the doors at KKC,
Well, here's the first thing you'll notice when you walk into the main office space. Every door is open, and there is a giant opening between floor number 1 and floor number 2. The building wasn't designed for a law firm. It was designed as like an educational space. It was kind of like an auditorium setup for the healthcare industry.
Interesting.
I think I have that story right. That goes back to like the 70s. But we decided that we were going to keep that opening because it was conducive to a sense that I can talk to you at any time. I can see you at any time. Your office door is always open. I can go and talk to the guys upstairs in estate planning when I have a probate litigation matter and I need a little guidance from the experts in that field. And, on a more practical level, I can just lean up and say, hey, I need some paperwork down here. Can you give me help? Or, do you need some assistance with something that you're working on upstairs? So that I think is visually unique, but it's also functional and consistent with what we're trying to promote. So as far as I'm concerned, we're never filling in the hole.
Yeah, got it. I like that. So you're definitely more of a collaborative type of organization then, right?
Another strength, I think, of the firm that I can elaborate on is that cooperation, collegiality, and camaraderie that comes from working together for the best result. There's really no reason, if I have a matter that has overtones in other practice areas, that I should feel like I want to hog all of that work and try to figure it out on my own, when there might be somebody who deals with that all the time that can give me a shortcut or point me in the right direction or find the right statute or find the right form and get us moving in the right direction faster. It's better for me, better for the client. It ends up being more cost effective, more time effective. So that's what we encourage and promote all the time. We never have encouraged anybody to sort of pig work and hang on to it and not want to get involved with others or feel like they're going to close their door and close themselves off from others who can add value to the file. Yeah,
no, I love that. And I think the other part that we've been talking about, and I know that your firm's a little bit different on, is law firms normally, like the ones that are here for decades of time, usually have a ton of traditions, and they have certain things of like legacy and ways that they did things and that kind of stuff that is like consistent throughout time. But I think one of the unique things about you guys is that you adhere to some of the legacy and the ways that things are done, but you're also embracing change, and you're looking for people that also like want to embrace that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Thank you. I appreciate you noticing that, because I think we've worked very hard to respect our history, but to be forward thinking. And I mentioned to you again off camera before we started that we're in the midst of sort of this rebranding with the assistance of a new marketing specialist. And we struggled with whether or not we wanted to change the name or the look or the color scheme of the firm. And I think we came up with a workable compromise where most of our material pays deference to the historical founders of the firm, specifically Kahan Kerensky and Capossela. But the world has gotten more used to dealing with brand images or acronyms, and we made a conscious decision that we were going to continue to be forward thinking and moved a brand image to a KKC logo that you now see on our website and other marketing materials. So tough call, but one I think that's paving the road in the right direction for the future.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you'll see that with a lot of organizations now, because it's, where I would say it's partly tied to like attention span and things like that, and things that like you can quickly like refer back to and remember and stuff like that. And so I think, the decision to be able to move to, abbreviated version, and then that's the thing that people will like automatically think of. But when they come back to the firm, they'll find that it is. And also the acronym
and the new brand logo are everlasting. The names, sometimes over time, the connectivity between the names and those in the community, be it the original founders or others who are there today, they fade. People, go through their careers, they retire and move on, and their client base, now seeks the assistance of other lawyers in the office. So I think the idea of the brand, encourages that sense of continuity. And I think you're 100% right that in the world today, when people are just a click away from being distracted, you got to give them something that they recognize, and not a bunch of names that they have to commit to memory and repeat. I think people will not struggle to remember KKC, people in the past have struggled to pronounce Kahan Kerensky and Capossela or spell it correctly.
Yep.
But we kind of look at this as being a more modern approach to presenting our name, our brand, and our image.
Yeah, and I like that because I think that also, again, it plays nicely with like the way that your firm operates, where you're attracting newer lawyers. You're trying to bring them in and give them like a path to continue to grow and move up within the organization. And I think part of that right now is modernizing, right? Like a lot of the people that are coming out of school, they're learning different techniques and different tools and different things to be able to help them, perform at the level that the firm will want them to. And I think tying, the way that the firm operates, even if it's at the baseline of like the logo, the naming convention, like all that kind of stuff, I think plays really well into what you guys are doing, and it's a testament by doing that.
We're really trying to attract new attorneys to the office that have that view of the practice of law and want to be part of something that's lasting, as opposed to, and I don't mean to offend anybody by saying this when I call out Gen Zers who come and just want an experience and then want to move on and try something else. Yeah. I think it's pretty apparent when you interact with those that are interested in making a career as opposed to having an experience. Mm-hmm. And we much prefer to nurture and educate and advance those that want careers as opposed to experiences.
Yeah, and I think your firm, again, as we've been talking, gives the ability to have the career, because it's not just you come in and this is the one thing that you do, right? Like you only get this one avenue. Like if you're just on, this one specific, you were talking about like zoning, like that's just what you do. Yeah. You don't have to, right? There's other opportunities. If you find a place that you're like, okay, I'm passionate here, then there's an avenue for it. But it doesn't mean that you're being pigeonholed into one type of thing.
And we actively encourage the new hires in the office to seek out other opportunities, even if they're not necessarily in what they thought was their chosen practice area. Mm-hmm. Go to a closing, do a title search, go to a zoning hearing, come to court with me on a litigation matter. It will make you in the long run a better lawyer by having that exposure, regardless of what practice area you ultimately choose. You might choose to be a tax lawyer at some point, but it's not the worst idea in the world to know how to search the title to a piece of real estate. It's not the worst idea in the world to know how a lawsuit gets filed or how a jury gets selected. That doesn't mean that you have to devote hours on end to those tasks, but just having a little working knowledge.
The surface level.
And again, in a community-based law firm, you're going to be in social situations where people are asking you sort of oblique questions all the time about legal issues. Yeah. And I think it's more impressive when you have a diversified and balanced view and experience in the law to be able to field some of those questions. And even if you don't know the specifics, to know enough about it to say, hey, look, let me point you in the right direction. If you want to talk about this further, give me a call at the office and I'll make sure that the person in my firm who knows the most about that is available to you to continue the conversation. But if all you know is one thing, it makes you a pretty dull party attendee, and it really doesn't help promote or cross-market the other practice areas of the firm.
Yeah, for sure. And we do a lot of that in our own organization too, on the IT side, where it's like a lot of individuals that come into these bigger organizations, they get siloed the same exact way that you're talking about. Yep. They might only know networking. They might only know servers. They might only know Office 365. But what we try to do is very similar, where we're like, we want everybody to have a baseline. You have to know, to a certain level of networking, server, Office 365, security, whatever it may be. But the idea behind that is that we want you to be able to have those concepts across every discipline that we touch. And then if you want to specialize in something, then it's like, great. Now everybody is at least at this same playing field. And then I have specialists in every category, because I think the more you silo off, I do think like, yes, you might be very good at that one thing, but the chances of you being able to be completely like busy and booked doing
And
that one
productive
thing,
doing that one thing, right?
and not having like some other perspective, right? Because something I may have learned on the security side could benefit me over here. And if I don't have that security side knowledge, I may run the risk of not even learning it.
And I'm sure in your business and mine, the market forces often dictate that we pivot, right? I mean, for a long time as a litigator, the economy was lousy, and we were doing lots of foreclosure and creditors' rights work and workouts in bankruptcy and things like that.
Yeah.
And then times changed, and there's very little of that work out there in the current environment. And lending rates went way down. There were fewer defaults. COVID came along and sort of halted lots of creditor rights activities and foreclosures. So if that's all you knew or all you were capable of doing, you were kind of in harm's way there for a while until you figured it out. But we had anticipated those types of market-driven changes and always had a more broad-based approach to not only the litigation practice, but to the practices within the firm as a whole. So, I mean, we weathered those storms, both economic and the pandemic ones, pretty seamlessly.
Yeah. So touching on the pandemic and that world, just because it's always interesting to know what organizations did during it and where they are now. I know that we were definitely against the grain when COVID started. A lot of our peers all went like remote, fully remote, or they started to roll out like the hybrid in 2 days, out 3 days kind of mentality. We didn't do any of that. We offered a work from home bucket. So it was more like work flexibility. So if you needed to take some time to let a contractor in or something like that, it didn't make sense to use your time off. We had it for those purposes. And it really sucked during COVID because everybody wanted to be remote. And so hiring was pretty difficult.
Right.
We made it through all of that. And now we're seeing the flip where people are trying to pull people back into the office and people are leaving because of that. But we didn't have to deal with it because we just never were fully remote. In your organization, I know we talked before about how litigation's a little different now, but tell me about like, how'd you guys navigate that and where do you stand now? And does that impact the culture at all?
All excellent questions, and I'll try to give you some historical perspective. I became managing partner about when COVID was peaking, right, in 2021.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. An unenviable task, but, one that was absolutely necessary to provide guidance and keep the firm healthy and both physically healthy and financially healthy. We provided a number of options in terms of remote work to accommodate the concerns of our employees, but several of us never really stopped coming into the office. We found that, me in particular, I just enjoyed being at my own desk in my own office, and I could close my office door if need be and wear a mask in the public spaces to keep others who were in the building safe. So we just basically allowed our employees to select what option they preferred. And it was interesting how quickly most, if not all, wanted to come back into the office as soon as that was safe and possible.
Yep.
And again, I think it dovetails back to our earlier conversations about the culture. People just missed being with other people and sharing the work experience and bouncing ideas and having lunch together. And it was a real acknowledgement, I think, of the environment that we created that so many were anxious to get back so quickly.
Yeah.
But a lot of the practice changed because, courts pretty much dried up on all activity. A lot of the advice that we started to give was about the pandemic itself. How do I deal with employee-related issues? How do we manage through a loan closing when we can't all be in the same place at the same time?
Yep.
But when we were concerned that the work would disappear, just the opposite, in fact, happened, where I think clients gravitated to good, long-standing, well-respected firms and turned to them for more and more assistance and guidance. So one could argue that our workload probably expanded after that short initial blip where everybody was just hunkering down and didn't know what to do or where to do it.
Yep.
So the pandemic certainly caused a blip soon thereafter in particular practice areas, but we kind of never missed a beat, which again is something that we're lucky and proud to say.
Yeah. So fully in office, even though litigation has changed, and has that just made you more efficient, more effective? Because now, like, you don't have to travel to the different courts to be able to, navigate that stuff?
The pandemic forced the Connecticut court system to come into the modern era. Unfortunately, we had sort of a very antiquated judicial branch as it relates to infrastructure. I mean, there was very little computer use in the courtroom. There were no remote hearings until COVID. So that meant that if I had a small matter that needed some judicial input or a hearing in New London, I had to get in the car in Vernon and drive an hour and a half down and an hour and a half back and bill the client accordingly for all of that time.
I don't even think about that.
And now I get an email with a link. I click on it. I get on a remote screen. I mean, on a screen and have a remote hearing, and it's over and done in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Think about the efficiencies of that when you apply it sort of systemically to all the matters that are in the Connecticut court system presently. On the flip side, I'll say that falling in love with new technology is great, but when you overuse it, that creates its own set of problems. For a while, judges were somewhat insistent on everything being remote. And we found that, like, conducting a evidentiary hearing where there was lots of papers and lots of exhibits and lots of witnesses, some of whom were, out of the area or out of state, presented a whole bunch of challenges, most of which I found very difficult to overcome. And as soon as the court system said, you don't have to do these hearings remotely, I was certainly on the bandwagon of let's get back into the courtroom and do this the way that we used to do it. So that might be a little old school, but I frankly think it's much more effective in a litigation matter to be able to look in the eyes of the person that you're cross-examining or the witness that you're presenting, and being able to hand them documents or refer to documents that are on a screen that are right next to them than it was trying to drag and drop a remote exhibit that you had uploaded into the court system and make sure that everybody could see it, and make sure that the witness wasn't getting prompted by a lawyer who was behind the scees somewhere that you couldn't see on another screen, because we had that experience
That's
a couple
tricky.
times. Like, I think this person's getting coached here, and if I was in a courtroom, I would certainly see what was going on. But with a bunch of screens, on a big remote screen, it was always difficult to figure all that out. So I'm happy we're back in the courthouses again, and I think for the most part, Connecticut's judicial branch has made the transition pretty effectively.
Got it. So I'm assuming you're not in the courtroom for the 15-minuters anymore. Like, now it's like where it makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, you have the ability in most matters to deal with a lot of the preliminary stuff through remote hearings, and then the bigger stuff that really requires dragging a box of documents and a bunch of witnesses off to the courthouse is kind of back to the way that it used to be.
It's very cool. I like how it adapts, right? Because there's definitely a need for in-person.
Yeah.
Especially to avoid the coaching and stuff like that. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that, but very real, and can see how it works. Yeah, I think for me, technology has done a lot of good in, enabling people to be able to connect and get to information faster and stuff like that. But there is something to be said about not replacing like the human element. And again, we're a technology company. Like, if anybody should be able to work remotely, it's us.
Yeah.
And, we chose not to for that same reason, because I want the collaboration. I love the open office idea, and like that's how we are. Like, I sit right on the floor with our team. Like, I'm like literally look across into another cube and someone else is there. Like, we make sure that we have that ability that if I have a question, even today, we have a new guy that joined our sales group, and he was asking about like timesheet questions.
Yeah.
And I literally just got out of my cube, went over to him and was like, I can help you with that. And I was like, it's been 8 years. I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
I was like, I could probably help.
I'm assuming that many of your clients raise issues or have needs for your services as it relates to AI and cybersecurity risks. Those are also things that are, sort of not if front of mind, pretty darn close to front of mind in every law firm and every managing partner in a law firm these days. AI has dramatically altered and will continue to dramatically alter how we practice, with its own set of risks and benefits. Certainly the cybersecurity concerns ramped up during COVID. I don't see any of those concerns going away anytime soon, because it seems like the bad guys just get more and more sophisticated, and the challenges to you in terms of, secure firewalls and security protocols just are never ending. So I do spend a lot of my time, and the firm spends a lot of its time and resources dealing with those issues. So I'm assuming that your business has some of the same concerns and provides those services to your clients?
Definitely, without a doubt. And I think, if anything, even our business in general, right? Like traditional help desk, desktop support, like all that type of stuff is going to be like, it's going to go away, right? There's going to be way less like human interaction in some of those like entry level, like desktop level type of like support that's needed, because AI and automation are going to be able to like step in and start to do that. And we're implementing a lot of those things with our clients now, but I think we're going to be moving away from the conversations of like, let's talk about your infrastructure and your networking setup and these other things.
Yeah. And
really the conversations are moving a lot more towards like business process. How do I integrate like all of your different programs, right? Because, what's the your major like CRM that you use in your organization? What is that program?
What is in terms of what operating systems are we using?
So like your practice management software. What do you use?
Practice management software is something called ProLaw, which is designed for lawyers.
Yep.
We transitioned to ProLaw, I want to say 10 plus years ago, and it was sort of this seismic shift that required a lot of time and training, and, everyone was intimidated initially. And like most rollouts, some people adapt to it pretty easily and pretty quickly, and some ultimately never do. I consider myself somewhere in the mid-range of that spectrum. But it helped us integrate the front of the house and the back of the house, because our two prior systems didn't communicate well together. The bookkeeping software, or the bookkeeping operating system, and the time management system were essentially two separate systems, and never did the two meet unless you sort of physically integrated them.
Yep.
So that was time consuming and wasteful. So ProLaw came along with a better mousetrap, and for the most part, I think we've been successful integrating it, and generally happy with the product.
Yeah, and so for us, that's where our business is transitioning. It's more of like, all right, you have a new employee start. A lot of firms use different like HRS platforms like Rippling or something like that to be able to hire new lawyers. We are helping organizations like tie in from like, here's the employee, here's their email, the team they're on, so what like access do they need to certain things, what systems, and then automation will roll and it will create them in ProLaw, so they have their account there and everything exists. We'll tie it into the billing system. It goes into like all of your clients tie into your marketing system. Like we're helping organizations really do that type of stuff, which is more like business enablement. And giving you a little bit more streamlining and efficiency. I see that where our industry is going.
Do you also
Cybersecurity
provide a
will go
lot
away.
of training in that regard?
So a little bit.
Yeah.
I think as far as like how they interact and how they connect, and then best practices to use them and that kind of stuff, absolutely. But if you're looking for expertise in like pro law, we're not going to be that. But we're going to be able to tell you how do these things talk to each other,
right,
and validate whether the connections are working.
Yeah.
But we have done that in a bunch of different industries, because everyone right now, that is the race. It is like, how do I do one entry to then set up a few different platforms all in a row, so that there's not all the manual entry into that. So that's where we're finding a lot of it, and a lot of even our other law firm clients, they're looking to spend a lot of their time and resources in Microsoft, and all of their documents and everything is getting saved in SharePoint, which then allows them to query off of with the new Copilot. And so then they can refer back to any other time that they had, referenced this statute or had this precedent before, and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're able to query into it and find it.
I am always very excited and overwhelmed by presentations like that. Our library provider did so recently with IA capabilities in terms of research, and it was mind-blowing.
Yep.
But then trying to change how you practice and who you are to transition to that wasn't quite so easy. So I was attracted by the shiny object, and then sort of defaulted to my old ways of doing things, just because I didn't have the bandwidth or the time to really get good at it. And if you're not doing it every day and using it all the time, you kind of quickly get stale on those things, or you forget. And now I'm at my desk and I'm wasting time when I could just literally go pull a book off the shelf if I had to and do it old school.
Yep.
So I'm a little disappointed and frustrated in myself for not being a little more progressive, but there are others in the office who have upped their game, if you will, and we're using it pretty efficiently. But AI in our business is both intriguing and totally frightening.
Yeah.
I
think for me, embracing AI and technology and all of the things that you're doing in the firm, I think also kind of ties into, as you move later into the stage of your career, and now you're trying to find and build future leaders in the organization. What are some of the things that you're doing to be able to find and build them?
Well, we identify future leaders of the firm in large part based on their talents and skill sets, and we use the example of AI as we were just talking about that. That presents sort of a unique opportunity for somebody in the firm to latch on to that, develop some experience and some knowledge base, and drag the firm forward, utilizing AI to the best of its safest capabilities for us, and establish a leadership role by doing something unique. Everybody who's at the partnership table has brought something different than the predecessors.
Yep.
One might have been good at helping us pick a new IT provider, for example, or to change how we practice in a particular practice area. And when somebody demonstrates that skill set above and beyond the skills that they have as a lawyer, you start to think, is that somebody that should be at the partnership table? So I think there are many ways to sort of advance yourself in the legal profession. Obviously, being a good lawyer is a prerequisite for any of that. But you kind of have to have a niche that makes you add value to the environment that you're in. And oftentimes that niche isn't, I'm just the biggest generator of billing revenue, but I'm very capable at transitioning the firm into the next generation when it comes to technology or when it comes to marketing. Several of us, I think, we're really pretty proactive in pursuing marketing opportunities. I probably did it more the old school way by going out to dinner and playing golf and doing seminars and writing articles. Well, that was 20 years ago. Let's find somebody today that's going to market in the modern world and do podcasts and have YouTube videos. Allison Poirier in our estate planning department has a little mini studio in her office where she posts these short and educational YouTube videos for her estate planning clients.
I love that.
And there are lots and lots of people in their 30s or 40s that are proactive and forward-thinking when it comes to planning for both their financial future and their estate planning needs, and they eat these things up. And she's done a really good job of marketing to a sort of niche that you wouldn't necessarily have sat back in your chair and identified, but she's done a great job in doing so. So she's a real asset to the firm in that regard, and that's just one example as to how you can bring something other than your usual toolkit to become a partner in the firm.
Yeah. And so if I'm, an associate in the firm and trying to build my way up, right, so that I can, get to that level, how do you blend the giving me the shot to be able to prove myself, but also not impact your level of service to your clients? How do you handle some of those,
Well,
balances?
working side by side is often a very good way of evaluating how that person and their work habits jive with your culture and your client's needs. So we do sort of double up or team up on files, and it gives you a good opportunity to evaluate how that person works in the trenches, how they interact with the client, and it gives that person an opportunity to sort of, I guess, learn from the older contingent about how they've succeeded and what they've done right to satisfy clients and do good legal work. So I think one of the ways that we promote that growth is to have an opportunity to work together on a file, and each of you bring your particular energies and skill sets to the task at hand, to the ultimate benefit of the client. And again, from a point of view in our business, not every client wants to pay my hourly rate for every task, so we can layer it a little bit so that it becomes more cost effective for the client without sacrificing the result in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So where does the client, relationship and all of that come into play, while you're navigating, who's on one of the cases or something like that? And also, in general, I think from the outside perspective, we look at the legal profession as not like a recurring, recurring model with specific clients, unless you're with an organization that may have you on retainer or something like that. How does the client relationship still, how does that matter to you, even if it's only hey, someone's reaching out to us for the first time and it's just one thing that they need? How are you?
Well, we're very conscious of cross marketing, and we look at someone who comes in the door and trusts their legal matter to us, and taking that leap of faith as somebody that we want to educate about what other practice areas might benefit them either now or in the future. So if you come here for a closing, which is probably the most common example, right? I mean, most people at some point in their lives buy a piece of real estate, and their first experience with a lawyer is often go into a closing. If the lawyer just does the closing and you walk into a conference room and you meet a paralegal and you sign a bunch of documents and out the door you go, and you never learn what's behind the other doors, that's a mistake by the lawyer handling the closing, in my estimation. That lawyer should be taking those people, often perhaps a younger couple, from the table, walking them through the entire space, seeing the operation and seeing the buzz, introducing them to other people and saying, oh, by the way, you now own a home and you have 2 children, maybe you ought to think about getting a will done. And maybe you ought to think about your estate planning needs. Not that we're putting the moj on anybody or cursing them, but we should be proactive in making those decisions and promote that. So we look at every client as an opportunity to cross-market to other practice areas for now and in the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that, outwardly, it definitely is, it's a way to show that you care. And it's oh, wow, they're really bringing me in here and showing me how
Right.
things work and all that kind of stuff, and that builds relationship.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, and I really didn't think about that, and as I was giving you my answer, but it does show the client that you're thinking about their long-term needs, whereas the lawyer that I described in my initial example is treating you purely as a transaction. Mm-hmm. And I think most people get that vibe,
Yeah.
and are less likely to go back to somebody who treated them like a number. No different than some of your other interactions with banks or other large organizations. If you don't have any personal connectivity, how likely are you to be a repeat customer of that business? Probably not very. You're always going to, let's look at it this way. If the lawyer is going to treat you transactionally, why isn't the client going to treat you the same way?
100%.
So next time they're going to say, well, that person, I don't really know. They didn't really treat me as a person. I'm just going to go find another lawyer for my next matter because they didn't make me feel special, or they didn't do anything to integrate me into the firm as a whole. So I'm just going to go to the next guy who might be more specific to what I need, or maybe a little cheaper, whatever. But you didn't do anything to earn that client's trust by just signing their documents and pushing them out the door.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that gets lost, especially now where we move into this like more technology forward and AI
Right.
and all these things, is like you lose some of that personal touch in the relationship. And I think the businesses that will do the best are the ones that still figure out how to like continue to maintain the relationship and build that.
Yeah.
But remove a bunch of like the busy work, the day to day, the in the trenches grunt work with technology.
I would say this to the prospective clients that are watching this podcast, which I hope are many. If you don't have a personal relationship with someone at the law firm that you're working with, you're in the wrong place. You should know something about your lawyer beyond, oh, gee, they did my closing, or they were there when I signed my will in front of 2 witnesses.
Yep.
The goal should be a lifetime relationship, and maybe even a generational relationship. I mean, we have the blessing of having been around for 60 plus years, and I can't tell you how many people that I deal with that are the sons and daughters of clients of Saul Kerensky's or Bill Breslow's or Joe Capossela's from years ago, or the guy who bought the business that Saul created in 1979, or the new operator of the farm that Bill Breslow closed back in 1985. I really value that continuity, and we work really hard at making our clients aware of the need to be proactive about the generational transition and being there when they're ready to do so.
Yeah, for sure. The relationship, again, is what it's all
And
about.
if they get a sense that you're stagnant and that you're not going to be around for the next generation, they'll have the wandering eye and they'll start looking for some other law firm that can service their needs. Not now, but maybe in 2040, when their kid takes over the farm or the business or whatever.
Yeah, without a doubt, for sure. So as we go to kind of wrap up the episode here, I'm curious.
There isn't going to be a sequel?
There could be. You never know. You never know. I mean, is there a sequel?
Well, we have more bottles of wine. I told you there more are coming. So
then there's very well could be a sequel to this. But say I'm either an aspiring law student or a new attorney, and I have aspirations to be a managing partner of a firm, right? Because there's a lot of people that can get to partner level in firms.
Yep.
There is not a lot of people who can get to the managing partner in firms. What would you say is some advice that you've had, throughout your career that you would say, like, hey, these are some things that you should think about, or you might want to do, or, what would you tell somebody that wants to be sitting in your shoes?
One simple piece of advice is darken as many doors as you possibly can. Go seek out interaction with others in the firm that have unique talents or do a certain aspect of management, and indicate your willingness to learn. Let's face it, there's nothing more flattering than having somebody come to you and say, oh, it looks like you do this really well. Could you help me learn how to do this?
Yeah.
But I'm often surprised at how many people sort of cordon themselves off or are intimidated or unwilling to have that conversation, maybe for fear of rejection or that somehow they're interrupting me or bothering me. I hope that we don't ever put off that vibe, any of us ever put off that vibe to the people in our office who are seeking our counsel. But you really, you almost got to make yourself an annoyance. I'd rather say, you know what, I don't have enough time. I've given you enough time this week. Let's schedule something for next week. Than have somebody who never shows up and never says, gee, can we go and have lunch? I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about how and why we do these things.
Yep.
So ask is my first piece of advice.
Yeah. And one of my favorite sayings, it ties into exactly what you're talking about, is the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Okay.
And that, I think, most people don't think about.
We have a similar adage in the firm, also tried and true, but there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Yeah.
In fact, the only stupid questions are the ones that don't get asked, right? So if you don't really understand how you're doing something and you want to get better at it, find somebody who either assigned it to you or knows more than you do and can help you go in the right direction, because sort of churning your wheels isn't doing anybody any good. It's making you frustrated. It's not time that's productive time that's ultimately going to make its way to a client's bill. So it's wasteful in that regard. And if all it takes is you coming to me for 10 minutes and saying, gee, I really don't understand why we're doing this or how we're doing this. Can you help me? I think that is, again, flattery at its highest level, and mutually beneficial. I get to know you a little better. You get to know me a little better. I see what your thought process is. You see what my thought process is. And to the extent that there are synergies, I think that makes you feel more part of the team and more likely to stay, and me more likely to think, gee, this person's really invested in this place. They want to learn, and they're willing to put themselves out there, even though it might not be that comfortable to come to somebody senior in the organization and say, hey, can we have lunch, or can you give me 10 minutes of your time? I really, truly respect that when people find a way to overcome their insecurities or concerns about doing that and come and talk to me.
Yeah.
I try to make myself available and seek them out and walk the space on a regular basis and say, hey, how you doing? Is there something that I can help with? And I know my other partners try to do the same.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's probably been what I would say is probably the most impactful thing in my career, is not being afraid to ask. And some of the people that I've reached out to, like one of my mentors, someone that I've learned a lot, whether it's business or personal.
Yeah.
He ran a $100 million organization, and he was the CEO of that company. And I'm like, who am I? Like, I'm just this guy that works in an IT company, and why is he taking the time to meet with me and just give me perspective and all these things? But it's because I asked.
And the same is true with client relationships. If you want to get to know your client better, make the effort.
Yeah.
You're too young to remember the old commercial for one of the airlines, and I can't remember which one it was, but it was a distant shot of a conference room where the boss walks in with a whole bunch of envelopes, and he says to all of his sales team, every one of you is getting on a plane today, and you're going to go meet with your biggest client. And it was an ad for the airline and promoting ticket sales, obviously, but the sentiment was, we're going to get to know our clients on a personal level. And if that means that you're getting on a plane tonight, or you're leaving the office tonight and going and have dinner with somebody, or you're picking up the phone and calling somebody for golf, that's how you're going to establish a relationship with people. And I remember when I was a young lawyer in the firm, I made myself occasionally call up a client and say, I'm doing some work for you, but I've never seen your building. I don't really know what it is that you do. I don't know what your operation is. Would you have any problem with me coming over there? And you couldn't have gotten a more enthusiastic response than I did to those types of inquiries. People couldn't wait to show me what they had spent their whole lives in career developing. They want to share that with people, and they want their lawyer to know what it is that they do. And I found it beneficial to me that when they called me 5 years later and said, oh, I have a problem with this employee who's working on this particular piece of machinery and isn't getting the job done, and we're thinking about making a change, I knew where that piece of machinery was on the shop floor, because I could still see it in my mind's eye. And I think if you don't make that effort, you're selling yourself a little short, and you're not doing all that you can to keep that tie to the client, that connectivity to the client.
Yeah, without a doubt. I love that. It's the real relationship is what really matters.
Right, and I think that's why I was so appreciative of your extension of this invitation, because it sounded to me like when we first spoke about this that we had a lot of the same thoughts when it comes to, what really matters in business relationships. And I still think it boils down to personal contact and personal communications. If you're not getting a charge out of that, maybe you ought to do something else, right? I mean, if you're in a service business like yours or mine, and you don't enjoy the time that you're spending with clients, and you don't enjoy learning more about them and their businesses, I'm willing to bet you're not going to have a really long career, or not going to have a whole lot of clients that are seeking you out.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate all the perspective that you gave today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was great.
Yeah,
enjoyed
absolutely. I think our viewers are going to love this one. So
good.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all.
Thanks again for this.
Excellent.